I tune pianos by ear every Tuesday. Today I heard something else. A digital recorder wedged inside the Steinway. The timestamps matched every day Amber said she was grocery shopping. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the Hartwell Estate's music room, casting geometric patterns across the polished marble floor. I adjusted my leather toolcase beside the pristine Steinway Model D, breathing in that familiar scent of aged wood and brass polish that had become my sanctuary over 15 years of piano tuning. Perfect conditions, I murmured to myself, running my calloused fingertips along the piano's ebony surface. The estate's silence wrapped around me like a comfortable blanket. No traffic noise, no household chatter, just the pure acoustics of a room designed for musical perfection. I opened my toolcase with practiced precision, each instrument nestled in its designated foam cutout. Electronic tuner, tuning hammer, mutes, felt strips, everything arranged exactly as it should be. Order, predictability, the mathematics of sound waves never lied, never disappointed. My electronic tuner displayed steady baseline readings as I powered it on. The LCD screen showed a flat line, no ambient interference. I struck middle C and watched the display jump to life, the frequency counter settling at exactly 261.63 Hertz. But something was wrong. My trained ear caught it immediately, not the note itself, which rang true and clear, but a subtle metallic buzz underneath, a discordant whisper that had no business being there. I frowned, striking the key again. The tuner's frequency reading remained perfect, but the waveform display showed irregular spikes, tiny distortions that would be inaudible to most people, but to someone who'd spent decades chasing perfect pitch, they screamed like fingernails on a chalkboard. "That's not right," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the vast room. I moved systematically through the keyboard, testing each key with the methodical precision that had built my reputation. The interference was localized, strongest in the middle register, specifically around F4 through A4. Each affected key produced the same metallic buzz, like something was vibrating against the strings. 15 years of tuning pianos in mansions, concert halls, and recording studios, and I'd never encountered anything quite like this. The Steinway was immaculate, maintained by the best technicians money could buy. Eleanor Hartwell, the retired music professor who owned it, treated this instrument like a sacred relic. I opened my toolcase and retrieved my borescope camera, a thin, flexible probe with LED lights that I used to inspect piano internals without dismantling anything. The device had saved me countless hours over the years, letting me peer into the mechanical heart of these magnificent instruments. "Let's see what you're hiding," I muttered, powering up the borescope. The small LCD screen flickered to life, displaying a grainy image of my own reflection. I fed the cable through the piano's access point, navigating between strings and dampers with practiced ease. The tiny camera revealed the familiar landscape of felt hammers and metal strings, everything appearing exactly as it should. Steinway's German engineering at its finest, every component precisely calibrated, every surface finished to perfection. But as I maneuvered the probe toward the problematic section, something appeared on the screen that made my breath catch in my throat. There, wedged against the damper assembly like a mechanical parasite, sat a small black device about the size of a smartphone. "What the hell?" I breathed, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted the camera angle. It definitely wasn't part of the piano's original construction. The device had a sleek, professional appearance, not some crude amateur recording setup. One red LED blinked steadily on its surface, pulsing like a digital heartbeat. It was active, recording. My pulse quickened as I manipulated the borescope for a better view. The positioning was deliberate, chosen by someone who understood both acoustics and piano mechanics. They'd wedged it precisely where it would capture sound vibrations while remaining completely hidden from casual inspection. This isn't some amateur setup, I realized, recognizing the quality of the equipment. Taking screenshots with the borescope, I documented the device's placement and visible markings. I could make out Zoom H1N on the casing, a professional-grade digital recorder that typically ran about $300. But there was more, additional circuitry that didn't belong on a standard recorder. Extra components, wires, what looked like a small antenna. Someone modified this, I whispered, studying the alien technology nested inside this musical masterpiece. The red LED continued its steady pulse, indifferent to my discovery. How long had it been there? Days? Weeks? Months? Every conversation in this room, every private moment Eleanor might have shared with visitors, every note played on this Steinway. All of it captured, transmitted somewhere beyond these mahogany-paneled walls. The morning's routine tuning had become something else entirely. The estate's silence, which had felt peaceful moments before, now pressed against my eardrums with ominous weight. The dust motes dancing in the window light seemed like tiny surveillance cameras, and every shadow could hide another secret. I saved the screenshots to my phone and carefully withdrew the borescope. My hands moved with automatic precision, but my mind raced through possibilities. Corporate espionage? Eleanor had been a renowned music professor with connections throughout the classical world. Blackmail. Wealthy clients often shared intimate details during piano lessons. Personal surveillance. But who would want to spy on a 70-year-old retired academic? None of the scenarios were good. The Hartwell estate suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a crime scene, and I was either a witness or an unwitting accomplice to whatever was happening here. I stared at the Steinway's elegant curves, its pristine ebony surface reflecting the morning light. 15 years of finding perfect pitch in imperfect instruments, and now I discovered something that had nothing to do with music and everything to do with violation. The red light continued blinking beneath the strings, patient and relentless as a predator's eye. The device came free with surprising ease, sliding out from behind the damper assembly like it had been designed for quick removal. I held it in my palm, feeling its weight, heavier than expected, warm from operation. The Zoom H1N was sleek black plastic, but the modifications were immediately obvious. Someone had soldered additional circuitry to the side, a small rectangular module with its own antenna no thicker than a pencil lead. LTE module, I breathed, recognizing the components. This wasn't just recording conversations, it was transmitting them in real time. My hands started shaking as the implications hit me. Every private moment in this room, every intimate conversation Eleanor might have shared with family or friends, was being broadcast live to someone's computer. The violation felt physical, like discovering cameras in a bedroom. I photographed the device from multiple angles, documenting the modification work. The soldering was professional grade, clean joints and proper heat shrink tubing. Whoever built this knew electronics and had expensive equipment. This wasn't some amateur spy gadget ordered online. Setting the recorder carefully on Eleanor's mahogany side table, I opened my laptop and connected it via USB cable. The screen filled with folder after folder of audio files, each time-stamped and dated. My cursor hovered over the earliest entry, 6 months ago. Jesus Christ, I whispered, scrolling through hundreds of recordings. Random sampling revealed crystal-clear conversations. Eleanor discussing her late husband's estate with lawyers, intimate phone calls with her daughter, even what sounded like therapy sessions conducted in this very room. The piano's wooden body had acted as a natural amplifier, capturing every whispered word with stunning clarity. The scope of the surveillance made my stomach turn. 6 months of constant monitoring. How many secrets had been stolen? How many private moments violated? I pulled up the LTE module's configuration settings, my technical background kicking in despite the moral horror of what I'd discovered. The device was broadcasting to IP address 192.168.1.47 using a cellular data plan that showed consistent uploads every few minutes. Real-time streaming to an unknown recipient. Professional grade, I muttered, photographing the circuit board. The modification work required both electronics expertise and intimate knowledge of piano mechanics. Someone who understood exactly where to place the device for optimal acoustic capture while keeping it completely hidden. The morning sun had shifted, casting longer shadows across the music room's Persian rugs. What had started as a routine tuning appointment had become something else entirely. I was holding evidence of a sophisticated surveillance operation, and I had no idea how deep it went. My phone buzzed with a text message. Amber. How's the tuning going? Don't forget dinner with Marcus tonight. 7 p.m. at Romano's. Love you. I stared at the screen, then at the surveillance device in my hands. Marcus. My business partner who joined the company 3 years ago, who had access to all our client locations, who understood piano mechanics better than anyone except me. A chill ran down my spine as connections began forming in my mind. Marcus had been present for every major client installation. He'd helped service the Steinway at the Hartwell estate multiple times. He knew the layout, the acoustics, the perfect hiding spots. No way, I whispered, but the evidence was literally in my hands. I switched my phone to mobile data, bypassing the estate's Wi-Fi network to avoid detection, and ran a network trace on the IP address. The results made my blood run cold. The signal terminated at 1247 Maple Street, apartment 3B. Marcus's building. Marcus's apartment. My business partner, the man I'd trusted with my company, welcomed into my family circle, considered a friend, had been conducting surveillance operations at our client locations. 3 years of access to wealthy homes, private estates, intimate family moments. I sat back in Eleanor's antique chair, staring at the evidence spread across her side table. Photos of the device, audio files spanning months, network traces leading directly to Marcus's door. The betrayal felt personal now, like discovering a knife in my back. But why? What could Marcus gain from recording our clients' private conversations? The answer hit me like a physical blow. Blackmail, insider information, corporate espionage. These recordings weren't just violating privacy, they were generating income. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Amber, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Everything I'd trusted was crumbling around me, and I needed to understand the full scope before confronting anyone. The device sat on Eleanor's mahogany table like a malignant tumor, its red LED still pulsing steadily. Recording. Transmitting. Violating. I had to know how deep this went. I stared at the device on Eleanor's mahogany table, my hands still trembling from the extraction. The Zoom H1N looked innocent enough, black plastic casing about the size of a deck of cards. But the custom modifications told a different story. Someone had soldered an LTE module to the main board with surgical precision. This wasn't some off-the-shelf spy gadget from Amazon. I wrapped it carefully in my microfiber cloth, the same one I used for cleaning piano strings. The irony wasn't lost on me, treating evidence of betrayal with the same care I gave to musical instruments. Somebody planned this, I whispered to the empty music room. The afternoon light, streaming through Eleanor's tall windows, felt different now, like it was exposing secrets instead of illuminating beauty. The drive back to my workshop took forever. Every red light gave me time to think, and thinking was the last thing I wanted to do right now. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to leave marks. The device sat in my passenger seat like a loaded gun. Back in the workshop, I connected the recorder to my computer using the same audio forensics software I'd bought for analyzing piano acoustics. Funny how tools meant for creating beauty could reveal such ugliness. The device contained 127 hours of time-stamped WAV files spanning 3 months. 3 months. I clicked on the first file. The audio quality was pristine, professional grade. Then I heard her voice. "Can't keep doing this, Marcus. Wayne's getting suspicious about the late nights." My stomach dropped through the floor. Amber's voice, but softer than I'd heard it in years. Intimate. The way she used to talk to me. Then came the second voice, and my blood turned to ice water. "Baby, relax. He's clueless. Guy spends more time with those pianos than he does thinking about real life." Marcus. My business partner since 2018. The guy I'd trusted with my client list, my reputation, my livelihood. I sat back in my desk chair, staring at the waveforms dancing across my monitor. The workshop's familiar comfort, my tuning forks arranged by frequency, the smell of piano oil and wood polish, all of it felt contaminated now, like someone had played a wrong note in the middle of a perfect piece, and now I couldn't unhear it. But I'm a professional. 23 years of tuning pianos teaches you to compartmentalize, to work through problems methodically. So I did what I always do. I got technical. I started cataloging each recording by timestamp and duration. The conversations revealed meeting locations, shared secrets, planning sessions for their encounters. But my trained ear picked up something else. The acoustic signatures were wrong. These weren't recorded at the Hartwell estate. The background noise patterns, room tone, reverb characteristics. They suggested multiple recording locations. "They've been using my client sites," I said out loud, my voice echoing in the empty workshop. "My reputation, my relationships, it's all been their personal surveillance network." I pulled up my network analysis tools, fingers moving across the keyboard with the same precision I used on piano keys. The device's IP address, 192.168.1.47. I ran port scans, network topology mapping, packet captures. The digital breadcrumbs led straight back to a private server registered under Marcus's home address. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed perspective. I picked up my workshop landline, the old rotary phone Frank had installed when this place was his. Some habits die hard, and right now, I needed the security of a hardwired connection. Frank answered on the second ring. "Carter Piano Services, Frank speaking." "Frank, it's Wayne. I need your expertise on something." Technical. His weathered voice carried immediate concern. "Son, you sound like someone stepped on your sustain pedal. What's going on?" I described the device without mentioning Amber or Marcus by name. The modified Zoom H1N, the LTE module, the sophisticated server architecture. Frank listened without interrupting. Another old habit from our years working together. Jesus, Wayne, that's military-grade surveillance equipment. Whoever set this up has serious resources and technical knowledge. This isn't some amateur operation. My hands were shaking as I held the receiver. What would you do? Document everything, every serial number, every timestamp, every digital fingerprint. And son, his voice dropped. When the piano's out of tune, you don't blame the strings. You check who's been turning the pegs. He gave me contacts for digital forensics experts, warned me about evidence preservation protocols. But his final words stuck. Be careful who you trust with this information. Surveillance operations like this don't happen in isolation. After hanging up, I dove deeper into the device's memory structure. Hidden beneath the audio files, I found something that made my blood run cold. Financial transaction logs embedded in the device's metadata. $23,400 in transfers from our joint checking account to an offshore account registered to Marcus Henley. The money trail revealed systematic theft spanning 18 months, each withdrawal timed perfectly with Marcus's access to my business banking information. I pulled up our bank statements, cross-referencing dates and amounts. There it was, clear as a tuning fork's pure tone. Every time I'd given Marcus temporary access to handle client payments while I was traveling, money had disappeared. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $500 there. Then larger chunks as he grew bolder. The workshop's organized chaos, tuning forks arranged by frequency, piano strings sorted by gauge, mirrored my mental state. Controlled fury channeled into precise documentation. I photographed every screen, printed every transaction record, built an airtight case with the same methodical precision I used to voice a piano's hammers. But the device had more secrets to reveal. A hidden partition contained encrypted communications between Amber and someone identified only as R. I managed to decrypt the messages using the device's own security keys, sloppy operational security on their part. The conversations made my stomach turn. Wayne's at the Morrison estate, Thursday, 2 to 6 p.m. Security code is 4471. Cameras cover front entrance only. Service door is blind spot. R responded with detailed questions about client schedules, estate layouts, security vulnerabilities. Amber had been feeding information to enable systematic violations of my client's privacy. The woman I'd shared a bed with for 9 years had been cataloging every detail of my professional life. My wife hadn't just been unfaithful, she'd been actively facilitating the surveillance operation, using my reputation and client relationships as weapons against the very people who trusted me. The workshop felt cold, despite the space heater humming in the corner. I pulled my jacket tighter and kept working, but my fingers were stiff now, clumsy on the keyboard. I decided to access Marcus's server directly, see how deep this network went. Big mistake. The moment I attempted a connection, my screen erupted with security warnings. Sophisticated countermeasures activated immediately, erasing my digital footprints and blocking further access. I watched helplessly as the server went offline within minutes, taking with it potential evidence of the broader surveillance network. Shit. I stared at the blank terminal, realizing I'd just announced my investigation to the very people I was investigating. My technical skills, usually my greatest asset, had just painted a target on my back. My phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Working late again?
Amber's worried about you.
The timing wasn't coincidental. It was a warning, disguised as concern. Marcus knew I'd found the device, knew I'd been digging. The message arrived exactly 43 minutes after I'd triggered his security system. I powered down my computer and sat in the growing darkness of my workshop. The familiar tools and equipment, piano keys, tuning hammers, electronic meters, suddenly felt inadequate against an adversary who'd been planning this operation for years. 23 years of building trust, client by client. All of it compromised. I locked up the workshop and walked to my car, but something made me pause. A sedan parked across the street that hadn't been there when I arrived. The silhouette behind the wheel suggested someone waiting, watching. I took a circuitous route home, checking mirrors and varying my speed. The familiar streets of my neighborhood now felt like potential ambush points. Every intersection could hide surveillance. Every parked car could contain hostile eyes. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat for a moment in the dark garage, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. The house's warm windows looked inviting, but I knew better now. Nothing was as it seemed. I found Amber in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. The domestic scene felt surreal after what I'd discovered. "How was your day, honey?" she asked without turning around. Her voice carried that calculated interest I was only now learning to recognize. "Fine. Long day at the Hartwell place." I watched her shoulders tense slightly at the mention. "Oh? Everything okay with Eleanor's piano?" "Just routine maintenance." I kept my voice steady, professional. "Found some interesting resonance issues, though. Amazing what you can discover when you really listen." She turned then, studying my face with those green eyes that had once seemed loving, but now felt predatory. "You look tired. Maybe you should get some rest." As I reviewed the device's final data files upstairs, one detail made everything click into place. The timestamps revealed Marcus had been meeting someone at my own house during my work hours. While I was tuning pianos across town, he'd been in my living room, my bedroom, my kitchen. The workshop clock read 2:17 a.m. when I finally spread the surveillance data across my workbench like sheet music from hell. The timestamps lined up with my appointment calendar in a pattern so precise it made my teeth ache. Every Tuesday and Thursday, the days I serviced the downtown hotels, Amber's car, GPS, showed her at Marcus's apartment on Maple Street. I pulled out my red pen, the same one I used for marking piano adjustments, and started connecting the dots. March 15th. I tuned the Meridian Hotel's lobby piano while Amber's Accord sat in Marcus's driveway for 3 hours. March 22nd. Symphony Hall maintenance while she was 23 minutes away, doing God knows what in his bed. The smell of wood polish and metal strings hung thick in the basement air, but it couldn't mask the sick feeling in my gut. 3 years of Tuesdays and Thursdays. 3 years of coming home to her casual lies about grocery runs and yoga classes. 3 goddamn years, I whispered to the silent pianos lined against the workshop walls. My hands trembled as I slipped the headphones back on. Amber's voice filled my ears, intimate and conspiratorial. "He'll be at the Meridian until 5, then the Symphony Hall for the Steinway maintenance." Marcus's response made my blood freeze. "Perfect. That gives us 4 hours to adjust the camera angles at the Hartwell place. The audio quality needs work. Too much ambient noise from the heating system." I ripped the headphones off. They weren't just screwing behind my back, they were coordinating around my schedule, using my own business appointments as their window of opportunity. Every client I'd trusted them with, every estate where I'd left Marcus to handle the technical details while I focused on the actual tuning work. The basement workshop suddenly felt like a tomb. 26 years I'd been coming down here, finding peace among the strings and hammers. Now, even this space felt contaminated. I pulled up the business van's GPS logs on my laptop, cross-referencing them with our official service calls. The mileage didn't match. Marcus had made dozens of unauthorized trips, to client locations, to electronics stores, to addresses I didn't recognize. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the evidence I was printing. Every page that came out of my old HP printer was another nail in the coffin of my marriage, my business partnership, everything I'd built. My phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m.
A text from Marcus.
Running late? Start the Pemberton job without me. I stared at the message, my coffee growing cold in my hands. In 15 years of partnership, Marcus had never been late to a high-value client. The man showed up 20 minutes early to everything, checking equipment twice, making sure every detail was perfect. I pulled up the surveillance logs on my laptop. Someone had accessed the Hartwell system remotely at 6:24 a.m., 23 minutes ago. My blood turned to ice water as the realization hit me. Marcus knew. He knew I'd found the recorder. The coffee tasted like ash as I grabbed my tool case and headed for the van. I wasn't hunting anymore. I was being hunted. The Pemberton estate sat on 12 acres of manicured lawn, the kind of old money that didn't need to advertise itself. The grand piano dominated the conservatory, a 1923 Steinway Model D that Mrs. Pemberton's grandfather had bought new. I set up my equipment with shaking hands, running the borescope camera into the piano's internal mechanisms. The tiny screen showed me what I'd expected and dreaded. Another device, newer than the Hartwell recorder, with a blinking red LED that meant active transmission. As I photographed the evidence, my phone started buzzing. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I listened to the message. We need to talk. Today. Marcus's voice, but different, harder, carrying a threat I'd never heard before. Don't do anything stupid, Wayne. You don't understand what you're dealing with. The conservatory's afternoon light felt harsh through the tall windows. Even the Steinway's familiar curves looked sinister now, knowing what was hidden inside its elegant frame. I drove home in silence, my mind spinning through possibilities. How many other pianos? How many clients had been violated? How long had they been planning this? Amber was in the kitchen when I walked in, humming while she prepared sandwiches. Too casual, too normal, like she was performing the role of devoted wife for an audience of one. How was the Pemberton job? She asked, not meeting my eyes as she sliced tomatoes. I tested her. Found some interesting acoustic issues. Might need Marcus to take a look at the resonance patterns. Her hand paused on the coffee mug. Just for a second, but I caught it. A micro-expression of panic crossing her face before the mask slipped back into place. Oh? What kind of issues? Her voice stayed light, but I heard the fishing expedition underneath. The kitchen felt like a stage now, both of us performing roles we'd outgrown. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows felt harsh and revealing, illuminating every lie we'd been living. I took a bite of my sandwich and tasted nothing but betrayal. I went upstairs to my workshop, needing the familiar comfort of my tools and equipment. But something was wrong the moment I stepped through the door. My precision torque wrench lay 3 inches to the left of where I always placed it. The laptop screen showed recent activity logs I hadn't created. Someone had been here, searching through my sanctuary. I knelt beside my tool cabinet, running my fingers along the lock mechanism. Fresh scratches marred the brass around the keyhole. Amateur work, but effective. They'd gotten inside. My hands trembled as I checked my computer's browser history. Someone had accessed my client database at 2:17 p.m. while I was at the Pemberton estate, searched for surveillance equipment suppliers and hidden camera detection. They knew exactly what I'd been investigating. The workshop that had been my refuge for 15 years now felt violated, contaminated. Even here, in the space I'd built with my own hands, I wasn't safe. The doorbell rang downstairs, sharp and insistent. Through the workshop window, I saw a grey sedan parked at the curb, the same one that had been watching my shop. David Thornfield stood on my porch, his weathered face grim under the afternoon shadows. The private investigator I'd hired to help me now looked like he was delivering bad news. "Mr. Carter, we have a problem." His voice carried the weight of years in law enforcement. "Someone's been asking questions about you, specifically about your work schedule and client list." My stomach dropped.
What kind of questions?
"Marcus Reed contacted me this morning, claims you've been stealing from clients, accessing their homes under false pretenses." David's eyes studied my face carefully. "He had photos, Wayne. Pictures of equipment in your workshop that he says proves you've been conducting illegal surveillance." The porch felt like it was tilting under my feet. "That's insane. He's the one who—" "I know." David held up his hand. "But he's building a case against you. Professional, methodical. He's painting you as unstable, obsessed with surveillance technology. The photos make it look like you're running some kind of spy operation." The afternoon air felt thick, hard to breathe. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. But Wayne, he's not just coming after your business. He's going after your credibility, your relationships. This is a coordinated attack." I leaned against the doorframe, feeling the weight of Marcus's strategy. While I'd been gathering evidence, he'd been dismantling my life, piece by piece. My phone rang, Frank's number. With shaking fingers, I answered. "Wayne, son, I need to ask you something." Frank's voice carried a troubled tone I'd never heard before. "Marcus stopped by the shop this morning, had some concerns about your mental state." The words hit like a physical blow. "Frank, whatever he told you, he showed me photos of equipment in your workshop. Said you've been obsessed with surveillance, talking about hidden cameras and conspiracy theories." Frank paused, and I heard 40 years of trust wavering in his silence. "Wayne, are you okay? Really okay?" I closed my eyes, feeling decades of professional relationships crumbling in real time. "Frank, Marcus is lying. He's been— Son, I've known you since you were 23 years old, but these photos, the equipment he showed me, it looks professional. Expensive. Where did you get that kind of surveillance gear?" The question hung in the air like a discordant note. How could I explain that the equipment was evidence without sounding exactly like the paranoid conspiracy theorist Marcus was painting me to be? I can't explain right now, Frank, but please just trust me." The long pause told me everything. "Wayne, maybe you should talk to someone, a professional. Marcus gave me the name of a good psychiatrist." The line went dead. 40 years of mentorship, destroyed with a few carefully placed lies. David was still watching me from the porch, his expression sympathetic but wary. "He got to Frank too?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Wayne, you need to understand what you're up against. This isn't just an affair. This is character assassination, executed by someone who understands how to destroy a reputation systematically. I drove to Eleanor's house in a daze, desperate for one ally who might still believe me. She'd known me for 8 years, trusted me with her prized Steinway. Surely she would listen. Eleanor answered the door with her usual warm smile, but something shifted in her eyes when she saw my face. "Wayne, dear, how are you feeling?" Her voice carried a careful, therapeutic tone that made my blood run cold. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you about the recording device I found in your piano." Her expression hardened. "That nice young man Marcus already explained everything. He's very concerned about your difficulties at home." She stepped back slightly, creating distance. "He showed me the photos of all that surveillance equipment in your workshop. Said you've been having delusions about hidden cameras." The words felt like a slap. "Eleanor, you've known me for years. Do I seem like someone who would—" "Mental illness can affect anyone, dear. Marcus said the stress of your marriage problems has been making you paranoid. He's worried you might do something unfortunate." I stared at this woman who had welcomed me into her home dozens of times, who had trusted me with her most precious possession. Now she was looking at me like I might be dangerous. "He suggested I have someone else service the piano from now on, just until you get the help you need." The drive home felt endless. Every familiar street corner looked different now, tainted by the knowledge that my reputation was being systematically destroyed. I sat in my car outside my own house, afraid to go inside. Through the kitchen window, I could see Amber on the phone, her gestures animated and urgent. Sarah appeared in the frame, and I watched my daughter's face fall as Amber spoke to her. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Dad, we need to talk. Mom says you've been acting strange." 17 years old, and now she was being recruited into their campaign against me. The suburban street that had once represented everything I'd worked for now felt like enemy territory. Every neighbor's window seemed to hide watching eyes. Every passing car might be surveillance. I finally forced myself to walk through my own front door. Amber was waiting in the living room with papers spread across the coffee table, bank statements, credit reports, and what appeared to be a psychiatric evaluation form. Her posture was calm, controlled, like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "I know you've been going through my things," she said, her voice carrying a steel I'd never heard before. "Marcus thinks you need help, and honestly, so do I. These delusions about surveillance, it's not healthy." I stared at the papers, recognizing the careful preparation. This wasn't a spontaneous intervention. This was a trap that had been months in the making. "Look at this credit report, Wayne. You've been purchasing surveillance equipment, following people, taking photographs without permission. The bank flagged several transactions as suspicious." She gestured to a printed psychiatric evaluation form. "Dr. Morrison is highly recommended. He specializes in paranoid delusions and technology obsession. Marcus has already spoken with him about your case." The familiar living room felt alien, transformed into a courtroom where I was the defendant in a trial I hadn't known was happening. "Amber, you know this is all lies. You've been feeding Marcus information about my clients, my schedule. You've been helping him plant those devices." Her expression didn't change, but I caught the micro-expression of satisfaction that flickered across her features. She'd been waiting for me to make exactly that accusation. "Wayne, listen to yourself. You're talking about conspiracy theories, secret surveillance networks. This is exactly what Dr. Morrison warned us about. The paranoid delusions are getting worse." I sat in my truck outside the house at 7:15 p.m., engine off, watching Amber's silhouette through the kitchen window. The manila folder, containing printed recordings and legal documentation, rested on my passenger seat. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped hours ago when I made my decision. The evening air carried the scent of jasmine from our garden, a smell that once meant home. I checked my phone one last time. Marcus's car was still in the driveway. Time to end this. The front door key turned with that familiar click that once brought comfort. Now, it sounded like a lock opening on a prison cell. Amber looked up from her laptop at the kitchen table, her practiced smile faltering when she saw the folder in my hands. "You're home early," she said, voice carefully neutral. The living room felt smaller somehow, shadows longer in the dim light. Marcus emerged from the hallway, still in his work clothes, khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He froze when he saw me, his face going pale. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly in the silence, marking seconds that stretched like hours. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady and strong. After 24 hours of chaos, I finally felt calm. "Wayne," Marcus started, but I held up my hand. I placed the folder on the coffee table between them, my movements deliberate and measured. The sound of papers settling seemed unnaturally loud. "I found your surveillance network," I said quietly, opening to the first page of time-stamped transcripts. Amber's face went white. The color drained from her cheeks like water from a broken pipe. Marcus took a step backward, bumping into the wall. I spread out the photos methodically. Pictures of the hidden devices, GPS logs showing Amber's car at Marcus's apartment, bank statements with highlighted withdrawals. Each document landed with a soft whisper on the wooden table. Every conversation, every meeting, every lie. My voice carried the precision of a man who had measured each word. 3 years of data, Marcus. Your own equipment documented everything. Amber recovered first, her chin lifting in that defiant way I'd seen 1,000 times before. But this time, I knew what it really meant. "You had no right to go through my things," she snapped, but her voice cracked on the last word. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, looking between us like a trapped animal. His expensive cologne couldn't mask the smell of fear, sharp and acrid in the warm air. I pulled out my phone and touched the screen. Their voices filled the room, crystal clear through the speaker. "He'll be at the Morrison estate until 6. We have the whole afternoon." "Did you check the schedule? I don't want another close call like last week." "Relax, he's predictable. Every Tuesday, same route, same timing." The quality was perfect. My own equipment turned against them. I watched their faces as they heard themselves, watched the moment they realized the scope of what I'd discovered. "This is from the Steinway at the Hartwell estate," I said, stopping the playback. "Your recorder, Marcus. Your voice, Amber. Discussing your Tuesday meetings while I was working." Marcus finally found his voice, hoarse and strained. "Wayne, I can explain." I cut him off with a raised hand. 3 years of partnership. 3 years of friendship. I set down a printed email chain showing Marcus accessing our business accounts without authorization. "You use my client list, my reputation, my home." The silence stretched between us like a piano wire under too much tension. I could see the calculation in Amber's eyes, the same look she got when balancing our checkbook, searching for the right numbers to make everything add up. She shifted tactics, her voice dropping to that soft register she used when Sarah had nightmares. "Wayne, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but we have Sarah to think about." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the manila envelope I'd been carrying since yesterday. The papers inside rustled as I set them on the coffee table next to the surveillance evidence. "Sarah deserves parents who tell the truth." I opened the envelope and spread out the legal documents. I've filed for dissolution of our marriage and the business partnership. You have 30 days to respond. Amber's eyes went wide as she read the header. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Carter v. Cook. Her hands trembled as she picked up the first page. You can't be serious, she whispered. The attorney filed yesterday morning. My voice remained steady, measured. I've documented everything. The financial irregularities, the surveillance network, the systematic deception. It's all admissible evidence. Marcus stepped forward, his face flushed red. The careful composure he'd maintained finally cracked. You think you're so perfect, Wayne? Always checking, always measuring, never trusting anyone. His voice rose with each word, bouncing off the walls of our living room. Maybe if you'd paid attention to your wife instead of your damn pianos, none of this would have happened. I felt my jaw tighten, the familiar urge to defend myself rising in my chest. But I didn't take the bait. Instead, I reached for the final document in my folder. Federal wiretapping charges, I said quietly, placing the FBI complaint form on top of the divorce papers. Invasion of privacy, unlawful surveillance of private residences. The Bureau takes surveillance networks seriously, especially ones targeting private homes without consent. Marcus went silent. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened and closed without sound. 14 client locations, Marcus, 14 federal violations. Each one carries a maximum sentence of 5 years. The front door opened with its familiar creak, and Sarah's voice called out from the entryway. Dad?
Mom, I'm home.
We all froze. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her backpack slung over one shoulder, stopping short when she saw the three of us arranged like pieces on a chessboard. The tension was thick enough to cut with a tuning fork. What's going on? She asked, her 17-year-old instincts picking up on the adult drama even without understanding it. My composure finally cracked, just slightly. This was my daughter, innocent of all the lies and betrayal that had poisoned this house. She deserved better than to walk into the wreckage of her parents' marriage. Your mother and I need to talk to you later, sweetheart, I said, my voice gentler than it had been all evening. Could you give us a few more minutes? Sarah nodded, her dark eyes, my eyes, moving between the three of us. She could sense the gravity even without the detail. Her footsteps faded up the stairs, and I heard her bedroom door close with a soft click. We were alone again, with our secrets and lies spread across the coffee table like a hand of cards nobody wanted to play. I began gathering the documents back into the folder, my movements precise and controlled. Each paper found its proper place with the methodical care I used when replacing piano strings. I've removed all the surveillance equipment from the client locations, I said, not looking at either of them. I'll be contacting each family personally to explain what happened. They deserve to know their privacy was violated. I looked directly at Marcus. The business accounts are frozen pending investigation. You'll need to find your own attorney. The weight of professional consequences settled over the room like dust on an unplayed piano. Reputations destroyed, careers ended, trust broken beyond any possibility of repair. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 8 times, each note clear and true. It marked the end of more than just another hour. Amber finally broke. The tears came all at once, streaming down her perfectly made-up face. Her shoulders shook with sobs that sounded genuine for perhaps the first time in months. I never meant for it to go this far, she said through the tears. I never meant to hurt you like this. Her voice was raw, stripped of all the careful manipulation I'd grown used to. For a moment, I saw the woman I'd married 9 years ago. Vulnerable, scared, human. I paused at the living room doorway, my hand on the frame. The house felt different now, like a piano with broken strings, still recognizable, but no longer capable of making music. I know, I said quietly. But intent doesn't change impact. Marcus stood by the window, his shoulders slumped in defeat. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, the confident businessman replaced by someone who'd gambled everything and lost. The house that once held our dreams now held only the echo of what we'd lost. 2 weeks later, I sat alone in what used to be our music room. The walls were bare now, stripped of the family photos and sheet music that had made this space feel alive. My tools were spread across the floor in neat rows. Wrenches, tuning forks, felt strips, all the instruments of my trade. I was removing the upright piano's strings one by one, preparing it for storage. Each wire released with a soft ping as the tension finally gave way. Decades of pressure, decades of holding the proper pitch, all released in a moment. Through the window, I could see the moving truck in the driveway. Sarah would live with me in the new apartment across town. She'd taken the news better than I'd expected, her teenage wisdom somehow understanding that some things couldn't be fixed, only survived. The room grew quieter with each string I removed.